Um, this is your third essay assignment, and the video is, of course, to walk you guys through the essay requirements. So this essay is actually going to shift focus entirely from the first two essays. So you're actually going to be writing a literary analysis essay over a short story that we're going to read in the class called In a Grove. Um, so this has nothing to do with your first two essays, but we are going to still apply some of those basic ideas of argumentation just in a literary analysis format here. So just to reiterate, just to repeat, you are not doing anything with the same topic and stance as your first two essays. This is a literary analysis essay over the short story In a Grove. So what you're going to do, your prompt is to basically create an argument about the short story In a Grove, focused on either a character, a theme, or an approach. So we're going to we've talked through some of these items in this unit, but basically, whichever you choose, there's some things you're going to want to think about. So if you're choosing a character, you want to think about behaviors, motivations. Think about why the main characteristics of that character are the way that they are, and the descriptions. How do you know this about them? What tells you, X, Y, or Z about that character? How do you know that they're a villain? How do you know that they're the murderer? How do you know that they're innocent? What tells you in the story? How do you figure that out? Is the character trustworthy? Might they be telling the truth? Why or why not? What might they have to gain or lose by lying? And then what's the background of the characters? So you can think even about the smaller characters. What's the background of those characters? For example, like the wife in the story, you might think about what the mother has to say about her, or the mother-in-law. You might think about what others have to say about her throughout the story. How do we know things about her through their testimonies? If you do a theme, that's really the overall point of the story. So what is the reader supposed to get from the story, and what evidence do you have that suggests that is a valid theme? So for example, if you're reading Harry Potter, there are many, many themes, but some of them can be things like the value of friendship, or the importance of being clever or witty, or outthinking, an opponent. What is it that tells you that that's a valid theme in the story? And what details help contribute to that theme? Because a writer is never just going to come out and tell you, the theme of my story is X. You figure that out by reading the story. And there's details or things that kind of tell you what that is. The approach could be how we use a school of thought when we read the story. So that could be, really, there's a number of different ones we've talked about. We've talked about gender theory. We've talked about historical views. We've talked about new criticism. So you could really look at it from a number of ways. You could look at it from a gender lens. You could look at, a feminist angle on the story. You could look at a new critical approach. So you could look at something like specific symbols or metaphors, or the importance of the plot, or characters within, or conflict within the story. Or you could look at something like, say, a historical or even a psychological angle, a lens. You could look at, the importance of the samurai culture, or the Japanese culture in this story. Or you could look at something like a psychological approach. So say, who is the protagonist, the antagonist, and what is the psychology of that person. So there's a lot of ways you could really read or analyze this story. Whichever you choose, a character, a theme, or an approach, is up to you. Just note that you don't need to do all three. Try and keep to one of these. This essay should have, just like any other essay, an introduction with a thesis claim, clear main ideas with evidence to support, and counter-arguments with refutations. So your essay is going to be 3 to 4 pages in length and is due on Sunday, November 21st by 11:59 p.m. Mla formatting is required. All assignments are checked for plagiarism through Turnitin, and make sure you adhere to the minimum page length requirements as well. So no research is required. However, if you do research on the story and you find a source and you want to incorporate that, that's fine. Just make sure you include that on a bibliography. Otherwise, your bibliography should just have a citation for the short story In a Grove. And that's really going to be what you submit as a final draft of the bib. So some examples here to kind of walk you through what this might look like. If you're looking at character analysis, you're really trying to pick maybe one character, two characters max, but I would really try and stick with one so you can dive really deep into that character. What you don't want to do is simply tell me what happens. You don't want to summarize the plot. You want to analyze a character. So don't tell me, first we meet this character and he says this, then we meet this character and she says this. That's not analysis, that's summary. So think about a specific character, whether that's the main character or the villain or the wife or the woodcutter or the priest or the detective. There's a lot of different characters you can analyze. Think about things like, are they telling the truth? How do we know? What about that character tells you that? Or think about certain characteristics like protagonist, antagonist. Are they round? Are they flat? Are they developed? How do you know this? What's their function or their purpose in the story? Why? What do we need to know about that character? If you choose themes, it could be things like the importance of truth or the idea that truth is relative. Maybe truth is just perception. It could be about the importance of honor or virtue. The idea of love is always important, or tradition versus rebellion. These are just suggestions, so if you think of another theme, I highly recommend you to write about something unique and of your own perspective. But these are just some ideas. If you do an approach, like I said, you could do a feminist reading of the wife or her role in the story. You could do a cultural reading. I've had students do this quite successfully, where we talk about the Japanese culture or the samurai culture and how it relates to the story. You could do a psychological reading. I've had students do a reading of the villain and to argue that he's, schizophrenic or something based on certain characteristics. Or you could do a new critical reading about something, like I said, like symbolism or motifs or whatever it might be within the story. So, say the importance of the samurai sword. Or I've even had students write about the importance of a kimono and why that's significant in the story, that kind of thing. So, to make your choice, think about what you want to say about this story. What struck you? Was it a character? Was it a message? Or was it a way to read the story? Like I said, you're not limited to these examples. I highly encourage you guys to kind of think of your own arguments or ideas here. You don't have to pass anything through me for approval, but you're more than welcome to send it my way if you want some ideas or suggestions. Again, you're still required to have all the parts of an argument. It's just talking about literary analysis. So you're talking about the story. You're still making an argument. For example, if I'm arguing that truth is just a matter of perception, that there is no such thing as truth, and I'm showing how the characters demonstrate that in the story, then that's an argument in and of itself. And that would be my claim, my thesis claim. So intro with thesis, main ideas with evidence. In this case, your evidence will be quotes from the story that show your audience what you're talking about. So if I talk about the importance of the Japanese culture or the samurai culture in the story, I'm going to pull quotes for each of my main ideas that show that relative to that main idea. And then think about also the opposing views and the refutations as well. So maybe you're arguing that a certain character is actually the murderer. And you say, now I understand why you might think it might be this character. However, this is why it's not them, and it's actually the person that I say it is. So as I said, the final submission is just going to be your essay with the bibliography. And make sure, like I said, you have lots of good evidence throughout the essay in the form of quotes from the short story that show that that evidence or that topic. And if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have fun with it. Choose something that's really and truly of interest to you. And let me know if you have any questions.